Well, there are 5 core things that people need to do. The first is they have to be aware that actually people are not telling us the truth. And that may seem obvious, but again, what the problem is that people often think, well, everybody's being upfront with me. In fact, typically when I deal with major organizations and major leaders, they're thinking, oh, we don't have an honesty problem, but I heard you do great work. But then what they realize is that everybody really is withholding. They're not only withholding their issues, but they're also withholding their ideas. So the first thing is about awareness. The second category and key that needs to happen in order to create more honesty is people need to realize the cost of lack of honesty. So for example, I had a client of mine who thought, again, not really the problem. Yeah, I'm kind of aware of it now basically because you're making me realize it, but it's not really the big issue. And then I said, well, give me an example of what's happening. Well, my leaders are not coordinating. Well, give me an example of that. And then she went on to tell me how a group of people were managing a project that should have taken them 4 months, but in reality took them 1.5 years. Well, when you total up the amount of people that involved and how many meetings they had and how many hours were actually wasted, and you translate into salary, you really realize that companies are wasting literally millions of dollars by not addressing lack of honesty. So first, being aware. Second, they need to realize the cost. The third thing is they have to model certain behaviors. And that is really a key driving force, because if people don't see that their leaders are modeling the behaviors of honest communication, then they're definitely not going to do that. So an example would be a leader has something to say, but they're worried, I don't know if this is going to come out well. So they don't say anything. But here's the interesting thing that I found out. When people say less, people worry more. An example, just think of it as a parent. When your children say less to you, you don't sit there and say, well, now I'm not worried. You worry more. When your boss doesn't say certain things to you, you don't sit there and say, oh, I'm not worried. They're like, well, they look different. They didn't say hello. They've been in meetings all day. I wonder what's happening. So people chatter in their mind, and all that is counterproductive. So what could a leader do is start to be much more upfront. And even if they don't have much to say, we don't have much to say at this point. But the key is to model certain behavior, and that's one of them, is to speak the honest truth. The fourth category that people need to do is they need to arm employees with how to share difficult messages, how to say these things. Now, this may sound obvious, but how often you thought, well, I need to say something to somebody, but it's not going to come out well. So forget it. They don't say anything. So I found out there are 9 key strategies that if you teach people these key things, they will actually start to speak the truth because they know how to speak the truth. And the fifth and final category is we need to hold people accountable and reward honesty. Now you might say, what's an example of rewarding? Well, I'll give you an example where we punish people who are honest. So for example, have you ever had somebody say, listen, you can tell me anything. No, anything. Please, I want to hear your honest feedback. And then you give them honest feedback and they flip out. Next time you say, forget it, I'm not going there. So they actually train or they actually punish us to be honest. And that's what the interesting thing is, that so often in organizations, we're actually punishing people for speaking the truth instead of what we need to do is reward people for speaking the truth.